Mic check. All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Can I get everyone to move this way behind the chairs, please?
On what? Facebook? Yeah, you can. Right on Facebook.
Are we live right now, man?
Yes.
Is this Cashmere?
Yes.
I don't think so. She's got it.
Thank you for asking.
Well, I'll just sit, I guess. I feel guilty. There's other people who probably need it.
Oh, yeah. Right, gentlemen. Everybody can move back over here towards the audience section. We'll get going.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be short.
Okay.
I almost didn't really swear, but I thought I'd better go back in and get it.
Mm-hmm.
Glad I did.
Well, hello. Sorry, I've got to. Can you hear me if I do it just like this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to use the projection. So, hello and welcome everybody on this beautiful January day, and Happy New Year to you all. Thank you for being here and joining us along with the Tarleton Young Cemetery Association in the historical marker dedication. I'm Cheryl Knowlton, and I am the regent for the Balcones chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. And we are so very proud that we were able to assist the family and the association with the cleanup of this historic and wonderful cemetery. I'm going to go ahead and begin the dedication at this time, and if I would ask Ann Elbert, who is the Balcones chapter registrar, with our invocation.
Can we take a moment, please? To all who pause in this place, may this marker make effective the voice of the memorial. May it remind them of the nobility of life well lived and quicken their response of acknowledgement of the ever-continuing call to unselfish service. Dear God, may we go forth from this place appreciative of the lives honored here today. May we follow their example by committing ourselves to service of the community and beyond. We who love this country ask that you not let us forget those who serve and continue to serve. May their example encourage us in our service to community, country, and world, so that together we may pursue the common good of all creation, here and abroad. In your name, amen.
Thank you, Ann. I would now like to request the presentation of the colors by the Patrick Henry chapter of the Texas Society Sons of the American Revolution with Fred Duncan and Jim Clements. This will be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag led by Ann Elbert.
Color guard. Carry colors.
SAR, please advance the colors.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Salute to the Texas flag. Honor
The Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mrs. Elbert. SAR, please retire the colors.
Color guard. Return to post.
Good afternoon. Can y'all hear me okay? I thank all of you for joining me today in celebrating 125 years of Texas history.
My name is Christy Boyd, and I'm the president of the Tarleton Young Preservation. And most of you know me as the granddaughter of Josie Young. You did that one to me.
Staring at.
So I can remember for years since the late 80s coming out here with my grandmother, and as she would clean and do what she could do out here, she would tell me stories. And a lot of those stories I thought really came from a Western movie. I started in about 2019 researching all the history out here, and all the graves here kind of led me down to other cemeteries in the local area, and I kind of put them all together and realized the way that our family kind of ended up out here, and it was really neat. When I started doing my research, I found articles at the West Bank Community Library, on the internet, on the portal of Texas history. I found books such as Eames' Portrait of a Community, and I found another good book, The Cedar Choppers. All of that information together kind of helped me put everything together and figure out where it all came from and why my family was here. I wasn't quite sure. It didn't take me long, because when I found this book here, The Cedar Choppers, written by Ken Roberts, on page 42 in chapter 3, I found out that William Riley Teague's daughter, Maddie, through children from her 2 marriages, integrated some of the most notorious of the Westlake families into the Robert Teague clan. Her marriage to Henry Tucker in 1872 produced only daughters, one every year for 6 years. The most notorious of the families that came from Maddie Teague's first marriage were the Youngs. Kate Tucker married old Young in 1897. And then I realized that all those stories that my grandma would tell did not come from a Western movie. They was real. And today I have with us a guest speaker, Ken Roberts, who wrote our book here, The Cedar Choppers. He's done a lot more research than I have on the local history and the people here in the cemetery and the other 10 local cemeteries here in the area. Ken Roberts is retired from Southwestern University in Georgetown, and his teaching and research focused on the effects of economic change on rural people, first in Mexico and then in China. He and his family have lived outside of Liberty Hill for more than 40 years, and he's the author of The Cedar Choppers, Life on the Edge of Nothing. And he's going to tell us a little bit more stories on his book. Ken, can I get you up here? No, it's just not working today.
Hi, y'all. Nice
Hello.
to be here. Yeah, I come in from Liberty Hill. Lived out there for almost 50 years. When I was about to retire from Southwestern, I had a couple of semesters off. I didn't want to do my normal research, which has all been fun. I mainly have looked at why people leave the land, why farmers in poor countries leave the land. But in this case, I had that encounter with cedar choppers as a young boy. You read the book, you know that I ran into some young boys. I was down fishing. I'm from West Austin, and it wasn't much back then, you know. And I'd go down fishing at what we called the Low Water Bridge, but now it's the Emmett Shelton Bridge, named after a famous man in Eames. And so, just to make a long story short, I ran into these kids, and they held up this stringer of fish and said, "Do you want to buy some fish?" And I was with my friend Dudley, who was a bad boy even then. It turned into what we called a hood, you know, and real fast, real strong. Dudley just popped right back and said, "If we wanted to buy fish, we'd go to the HEB." Well, those boys were offended, and they came back, and one of them was holding the club. And we decided that even though normally we might have won a fight with these kids, but these kids were not, they weren't going to lose. They weren't going to lose. So we decided we would just hightail it out of there. Anyway, so I'm glad to be here. This is the I'm very into these cemeteries. I mean, right up the road is the Tucker Cemetery. And then out Bee Cave Road is the Roberts Teague Cemetery. And then on Spicewood Springs Road, if y'all haven't been there, this is the last remaining part of Old Austin. You know, the creek runs through there, Wolf Creek, and it's still beautiful. You know, and there is the Oak Grove Cemetery. Now, my way, we've got another, what I call them plans. And really, it was kind of a way for you to be able to read the book and kind of place people, because there's just four, I call them four clans. I call this one up there is the Patterson Pierce. Anyway, let me get started. So, y'all know more than I do. One. I'm just going to repeat some of what she said. I think it's called the Tarleton Young Cemetery because Abby Tarleton is buried here. She was born in 1835 in Washington County, Texas, died in 1922, and married John Tarleton in 1859, and he died in 1897, and he's buried here too. And Oliver Young is the first Young I could find buried here. Born in 1874 and died in 1917. And I have the story here.
Tom Young, I'm sorry, 1906.
Tom Young's the first.
Young.
Okay. Right. Well, so all Young, here this is from the Austin Statesman in September 17th, 1917. All Young killed by Joe Epps. Shooting occurs on the lake 10 miles from Austin. So I spent a lot of time in the old Austin Historical Center, you know, down there in downtown Austin, right by that little park that dips down in there, and would have to just go through these newspapers, you know. It took a long time, and now all that stuff's online. It's so cool. All Young, who lives on the lake about 10 miles northwest of Austin, was shot and killed by Joe Epps Sunday morning following a dispute over some lumber. Now, I heard from somebody, and I couldn't find who, that it was about because Aunt Lade Young stole some eggs. I heard this story. So anyway, by the way, I just love to collect these stories, and I'm not writing another book, but I do have a website, and I've been collecting them, and I haven't put them on the website yet. But if y'all have some stories to tell me, I think I can get them out there in the public, because that website is all available. Anyway, the shooting took place on the bank of the lake while Epps and his wife were getting into their motorboat. Young is about 50, I think he was actually 43 at the time, years old, and Epps is 57. Sheriff George Matthews arrested Epps, and he's now being held in the Travis County Jail pending his trial. Young is survived by his wife and several children. I don't know what happened to Joe. He was Joe, the guy who killed Epps. So, but anyway, you started out with that part about all Young married Kate Tucker. And he was the daughter of Ellis Tucker and Mattie Teague. Now, I'd say if anybody was a matriarch of the Teague family, which is a big family of cedar choppers out on Bee Cave Road, it'd be Mattie Teague. She was way back there. Her parents came from Kentucky and the Ozarks, like so many cedar choppers. And I call the book On the Edge of Nothing because these were mountain people, right? I mean, they hunted and they fished and they lived out, they're hillbillies out in Appalachia. And when they got to the hill country of Texas, they kept moving all the time, Ozarks, Texas. And with the one, they loved it here. They had the beautiful water and, good game and all that sort of stuff. And two, they couldn't go any further. They were on the edge of the Llano Estacado. There was nothing for a mountain boy, in Lubbock, Texas, or, San Angelo or something like that. So they call it the edge of nothing because they were on the edge of nothing. And also because they literally lived day to day. So, I mean, if some of these guys, if you read the thing, it's like, if they got any money, they're going to spend it right away. They're not going to save it. Why would you save it? You can have fun. Money was grabbing fun. So anyway, like you were saying, they had all these girls, only girls, and every one of them married into what became the big cedar chopper families. Annie Tucker married Charlie Pierce. Their son, Lytton, married Edna Patterson, and I call that the Patterson-Pierce clan. And then they had a bunch of sons. Lytton Pierce had and his wife Edna. They lived on a little house right up from the low water bridge. You could pass by it, and we would drive by it. My sister would say, "You know that 14 people live in that house?" I go, "No, there's no way." But that was, and that's where Luther Pierce, who I went to school with, there's a picture of him in here, is their youngest son. Barely survived. Weighed about 3 pounds when he was born, and Edna gave him a little drop of liquor every day and something else, and he survived. And I went to junior high with him. So Henry opened up, and for the first time, it used to be that some of the Cedar Chopper girls would come in and go to school, but the boys pretty much started working. So it's a comeback or circle back around. So I was a little worried. Luther was my last person I interviewed. I had a hard time finding him. And I was a little worried about it, frankly, because I wasn't a Cedar Chopper. I started off the book, I have a confession, I'm not a Cedar Chopper. But I heard about him all my life, and I interacted. So I was a little worried about Luther because I thought, well, Luther might say, well, Kenny, you didn't talk to me then. Not that I was putting down, we just ran in different circles. So why do you want to talk to me now? Unlike that, Luther was the sweetest, nicest guy. He had a real deep voice and talked real low. So at the end of it all, I just got so much from talking to all these folks. It was such a responsibility, frankly, to talk to their descendants and realize how much they wanted their stories to be told. And so I took every one of them a book, at the end. I took Luther a book, and he calls me up about a month later. He says, hey, Kenny, he said, you know that book you write? I said, yeah. He said, I really liked it. I said, well, man, that needs a lot coming from you, Luther. I really appreciate your saying it. So, them boys you met down on the river? I said, yeah. He said, well, I think that was me and my cousin Charlie. Full circle. Full circle. So that was the Pierces. Lula Lynn Tucker married Duff Short with the sons Walter, Charlie, and Tom. Now, Tom married Hazel Hamilton. And the Hamiltons are buried here, too, I believe. Okay. So, let me tell you a little story about. Okay, wait. Emmett Shelton said, all these short boys, they just look at an object, and if it weren't grown to the ground, they'd lift it up. Mary Tucker married Jim Plumley. Jim Plumley got killed later on. Maddie Tucker, daughter, married Baldy Brown. Baldy married Buddy Brown. Buddy Brown rode a white horse on Wall Street. They lived on Wall Street. They called it Tobacco Road, which is a real put-down slur, because that was made a lot of fun of hillbillies. He rode a white horse with a black hat, a rattlesnake hat band, and rattles hanging on it, with carrying a rifle. I mean, we're talking 1940s, 50s, somewhere in there. I mean, just scared the hell out of Austin, frankly. They really did. If you ever encountered one, they were good people for the most part. But they were strong, very strong. So, and Austinites kind of looked down on them, and if they felt they were being looked down on, they might react badly, and they could just rip the crap out of anybody. So here's a little story. Stony Teague told me this. Stony Teague is the son of Homer Teague, who was probably the most famous Cedar Chopper BK road. There's a Patterson Lane out there. Seen it? Patterson Lane way out by Cuernavaca, in that area on BK Road. And Homer Teague raised his two boys there in the First Dean School place. And Homer stopped driving when he was in his early 20s because he had taken his car and run it into the grocery store on South First Street and just ruined it. And so he stopped driving, and he'd walk all the way in to South Congress and Patterson Road with a bag and a rifle, and So Stony Teague, one of the persons I talked to, told us a funny story about Baldy and Charlie Brown, who were the sons of Buddy Brown and his cousin Earl Short of the Roberts Teague clan. There was a liquor store close to the river on South Congress where Baldy and Charlie would buy their wine. This is what Stoney said, how he put it. He said they had a cardboard display sitting up on the counter, and had them old watches on that display. Charlie and Baldy and Olive and Earl Short, they all stopped in there, and Earl seen them watches. Well, it wasn't none of them read, write, or tell time, but Earl just had to have them. This, to me, is one of these stories that I've heard a lot of where life is about having fun. You don't have to be able to tell time to have a watch. Well, him and Tom was cutting cedar out there on Barton Creek, and it got along early up in the morning the next morning. Tom hollered to him and said, "Say there, bud, what time are you?" He took out that old watch and said, "There she be." And he said, "Damn if it ain't, let's see." They didn't know what time it was, but they couldn't tell time. So, it was fun. So anyway, they're back to all young. So I got a story about the Youngs I'm going to read to you. The book, and that'll be all. It's one of my favorite stories. It's about Ike Young. Now, all Young, I believe, is not buried here. Ike Young is not buried here. He died in either Leavenworth or Alcatraz. And
He is here.
He is here.
They went and got him.
Went and got him.
Uncle Norman, I just want to make sure I'm correct on that. Uncle Norman, Ike Young is here, correct? Ike?
You think up on the front
He
row?
is here.
He's here. Okay.
They
Well, he
went and got
died
him. They did die. He got lost one day. They had to wait one day to bring him back home.
Okay. Was that in Alcatraz?
That was, yes, sir.
Okay. So, moonshine. I asked Stoney Teague, I said, did you know anybody that made moonshine? She said, everybody made moonshine. Everybody with any ambition, that is. It's true. There's a lot of great stories about moonshine. Anyway, so they had just busted, the feds really went on a rampage during Prohibition to try to shut, there were 100 gallons of moonshine coming out of the Bull Creek area per month. They wanted to shut it down. They had just busted Ernest Thurman, and they wanted to bust Ike Young because he was one of the biggest moonshiners in the area. So there were several big stories in the newspapers during the 1930s involving moonshine and people in the clans. In two of them, liquor is ancillary to the larger story, and fighting in the first, genuine viciousness in the second. The story of Ike Young, however, is mainly about liquor and the massive effort by the feds to control moonshining in the hills. Ike Young had a 60-gallon whiskey still draw across from Mount Vanell. He was the target of the feds not only because it was a fairly large-scale operation, but his family was already infamous in the area. Agent Wilford Tommy Thomason was particularly eager to apprehend Young. The previous year, he had busted Ernest Thurman and his wife Delamay Brust for operating a 50-gallon still on Bee Cave Road. Both Ern Thurman and Young were well-known outlaw bootleggers. Ike already having served time in Huntsville for burglary, and Ern Thurman charged with intent to murder more than once. Thomason, known as a particularly aggressive investigator, was determined to shut him down. It was early evening on Valentine's Day in 1937 when three agents rowed across the river from Kennelwood Boat Docks. These ring bells to me, and I grew up in all this area. And worked their way north to the still. They had it under surveillance for days and were waiting for the run of MASH to begin before making the arrest. Although originally not a part of the arrest team, another lawman said Tommy was so eager to be in on that raid that he went along with Mitch that day. Agent Marty Mitchell described the event. Before we started down to the still site, Tommy, standing on the top of a ravine, held up two fingers and said, 2 men. When we moved down to the ravine, we found Ike Young and Hazel Hamilton.
Ike is Hazel.
Hazel maybe is not. Some other Hamiltons are. There and arrested them. And I called up to Thomason. I've got him, Tommy. The agents were ready to leave with the two handcuffed suspects. Thomason said, "You stay here, Mitch. I'm going down the trail a minute." Shortly after, there was a burst of shots. The shots were exchanged between Thomason and Pete Martinez, who lived in the area and was working the still with Ike. Both died in the exchange. And except for a third agent seeing flashes of gunfire in the dark, there were no witnesses. That agent chased the second fleeting subject through the thick brush and shot at him several times, but he escaped across the lake in a boat. The fleeing subject was 15-year-old Husel Hamilton. He and his sister Hazel, 18, and Beulah, 22, lived with Ike and other members of the Hamilton family in a two-room shack at Taylor's Slough. Y'all know where Taylor's Slough is? Taylor's Slough is if you take Windsor Road from Exposition and you were just to go right down to the lake, that's Taylor's Slough. Husel picked up the .38 revolver that Martinez had used to kill Thomason and gave it to his sister to bury. The next morning, dozens of agents from across the state descended on the area, ordering a roundup of all the residents between the dam and Mount Dam. Imagine that. It sounds like Vietnam, you know. They found young Husel covered under a mound of blankets and charged him, his sister Beulah, and Ike Young with murder under a new law that made the death of an agent in the line of duty a federal offense. Another 11 people were charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States of internal revenue taxes. The entire Hamilton family was put in jail, including 3 children under the age of 9. The sheriff said it was to keep them from going home. Residents of the area were upset. The woman called Mitchell's wife and warned her to keep her husband away from Taylor's Slough. It was a sensational case, occupying the front page of the Austin Statesman for days. More than 50 people were called to the stand, including a storekeeper on 34th Street who said Young would frequently purchase 50 to 100 pounds of sugar, rye, and yeast. The paper called Ike Young an unkempt Travis County hillman, eventually shortened it the hillbilly moonshiner. Once again, people in the Cedar Chopper clan were paraded through the news, and the fears of Austinites were confirmed. The story after story in Austin. The charges against Husel and Beulah Hamilton were dropped, and the feds were determined to put Ike away from murder. They did not care that he was handcuffed at the time of the killing, that he was unarmed and had not resisted arrest in any way, or that the gun used to kill Thomason belonged to Martinez. According to Agent Missel, after Thomason had gone down the trail, he had asked Young if anybody else was around, and Young said no. But Hazel asked for a drink of water out of a barrel, and while leaning down, she kept looking up the draw where Thomason had gone. The charge was that Ike knew Thomason was walking into a trap, yet Martinez was not near the still and would have no reason to shoot at someone approached in the dark. Nor would Ike, already handcuffed, have anything to gain by having Martinez kill the agent. This is they're really railroaded Ike Young. The star witness for the theory that Ike had orchestrated the killing was a convicted murderer who was beginning a 99-year sentence. His record at Huntsville shows him to be extremely unruly prisoner, receiving 20 lashes several times during the year for bad behavior. He resided in Fayette County and committed the murder in Rio Grande Valley, so it's not clear why he's being held in Travis County Jail. He wanted to transfer some states so he could escape. Though he claimed he was not promised anything for his testimony, he was granted that transfer immediately after the trial. The convict said that Ike told him he knew the officer was. The convict said that Ike had told him that he, quote, knew the officer who left was walking into a death trap, and that if it had been any other officer, Ike would have warned him. But Ike said he didn't mind seeing that one go down. The convict admitted not liking Young, but denied having written a note threatening to kill him because he wouldn't take a bath. But he added, so we gave him. One can only wonder how that came about. Although not a large man, Ike was a cedar chopper and strong, and would have taken several men in the complicity of the jailers for a bath to have occurred. Ike was sentenced to life in prison. The week before he was sent to Leavenworth, he formally married Beulah Hamilton in the jailhouse court. 2 years later, she was working in a Works Progress Administration sewing room and supporting her mother. Husel, two brothers, and son Alfred Carl Young. By then, Sister Hazel, who had pleaded guilty on a liquor tax charge, was married to Tom Short, brother of the famous bootlegger Earl Short. Husel went to the Army in 1942. Ike died in Alcatraz in 1952. The murderer who put him away was stabbed to death in prison a year after his testimony.
Wow.
It's no wonder that the Cedar Chalkers mistrusted the law.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
I want to know, are the interviews that
Ken.
are the interviews that you took and the people's voices that you recorded, are those available online?
They're all available online.
Oh, that's wonderful.
They're right. You can go to the website. It's easy to remember, thecedarchoppers.com. You can get them through there. And one of the guys I interviewed was named Kerry Russell. And I was looking for his address because he helped my grandson out, and my grandson wanted to write him a note. And I put it in there, and it popped right up. Kerry Russell, interview Portal of Texas history.
Excellent.
And the neat thing about listening to these voices is a lot of them are voices from another time. I mean, they really are. Particularly, one of the Teagues married a Ratliff, and there's an interview with a guy named Simon Ratliff. It's just amazing to hear these voices. Yeah, I recommend that.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
So history's forgotten if we don't keep it fresh, and I just thought that this history needed to be told again and remembered, all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. After reading this book, I knew preserving this cemetery and sharing its Texas history with the community was the best way to make sure that this history was never forgotten. Our second speaker today is Ellen Belazar. I don't want to chop that up, Ellen. Don't let me chop that up. Ellen is with the local Eames ISD and part of the Eames History Center. If any of y'all have ever been out here to the History Center, if you haven't, it's going to be open this afternoon after the ceremony for all of us to go and take a look at it if you want. In the 1980s, the residents of the Eames community petitioned that the Eames ISD to develop a historical program with the goal of preserving the history of the area and creating a resource for an education program as part of the Texas history of the elementary schools. And we have Ellen here today to tell us a little bit more about all of that.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Christy.
Ellen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I sense that all of you are related, or most of you are related to somebody who's buried in this cemetery. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yes.
Okay. That is so cool. On behalf of the Eames School District, I welcome you or welcome you back to the land of your ancestors. I'm honored to bring you greetings from the Eames History Group, and as well as the school district and the West Bank Library, who are partners in making the history group continue. Our purpose is to learn, share, and celebrate the great history of this unique area. And my gosh, to be able to hear the stories like Ken Roberts has just shared with us. This area is unique as no other. I'll give you the 2-minute version of the history of this area. First, starting centuries ago, we know that Native Americans had a fondness for this area, particularly when they were out foraging or hunting, and particularly along our waterways like Barton Creek that's right across the highway here. But then for decades, this area was populated very, very sparsely by those people who did not want to be found. Bandits. We might have a descendant of a bandit over here. Bandits, outlaws, this might surprise you, Union sympathizers. During the Civil War, Travis County was one of the few counties that did not vote to secede. And so those Unionists who wanted to stay in the area but had to hide came out into these hills. Think about the thick cedar forests, the ravines, the waterways, the hills, how densely the landscape was. They could hide here, even though there were Confederate soldiers who built a gunpowder factory on the next hill and used bat guano that they got from Barton Creek to make gunpowder. So it was that thick and that dense. And that's the kind of landscape that your ancestors came into. What fabulous pioneers. That shift began about 150 years ago, because after the Civil War was the first time that settlers of European ancestry began to filter very, very slowly into this area. And one of the first was Mrs. Tarleton, Granny. She's buried right over here. If you hadn't seen the Tarleton section of the cemetery, hers may be one of the oldest graves, but she came out in this area and, according to her gravestone, homesteaded in 1868. That means she got here a couple of years before Robert Eanes, the more famous, if you will, or the person for whom the area is named. Because it was in 1872, again, just a few years after Granny settled, that Robert Eanes migrated with his wife and 8 children from Mississippi. Well, that was 150 years ago. And Robert Eanes had been in this area about 15 minutes when he was asked by the new county school superintendent to form a school. Texas had passed a constitution after the war saying every county needs to establish schools. So Robert Eanes, a new settler, was asked to start that school. I think because he had 8 children with him. That would be a good reason there. So he got a neighbor to help him. They built, and neighbors helped neighbors. He got a neighbor to help him, and they built a log cabin, and the area became known as the Eanes School area. I've even seen obituaries from as late as the 1940s where people are said to have been born in the Eanes School area because it was describing the area around the school. But a very important family, the Teague family, William and Sophie Teague, 2 years after Robert Eanes built that log cabin, they did something that made the community, and that was they donated 2 acres of land for a schoolhouse and a church house. And that put a pin in it. That anchored the place where Robert Eanes had that log cabin. And for 150 years, all the children in this area have had access to public education, thanks to the gift of the Teagues. And it's because of their gift and that anchor that we can claim to be the longest continuously operating school district, public school district in Texas.
Yeah.
The school was for children of the landowners, it was for children of the laborers on the ranches, and it was for children of the cedar choppers. Everybody was there. They were only there for 4 months because they had to work, but they were there. And over the years, it sustained. And all of the people in this community had a value on having that school as the anchor of the community. Because for 100 years after the school was formed, this area as a community was isolated, especially from Austin because of Barton Creek on the south and the east, and the Colorado River, or now Lake Austin on the north. There were no bridges. It was about a day's drive to get into, or a day's wagon trip to get into the city. So they didn't go very often. So this was an isolated community. I think in part because of that, the community really developed an identity. People shared the characteristics of being independent, resilient, and resourceful. Independent, resilient, and resourceful. And that continued. Well, fast forward about 100 years, the 1970s, And that's when Westlake High School was built. So the Eanes School went from 7th grade all the way up through 12th grade. That began to bring people into the area. Neighborhoods, like you see all along 360 today, began to be developed. Bridges were built over the waterways. And yeah, us city folk began to infiltrate this very, very special area. But those roots that had been planted by people like your ancestors, they were planted very, very deep. And I would argue that to this day, there is still that feeling in this area that those of us who call it home are independent, resilient, and resourceful, just like your ancestors were. And it's due to families like yours, families who take care of memories and who share stories, that there are 10 historic cemeteries in the Eanes Independent School District that are family cemeteries. But I would argue that this one, the Tarleton Young Cemetery, is the most authentic. It is the most representative of what a settler family is. And I think that is because you have taken the time and the care that you put into this cemetery and the restoration, and particularly saving the unmarked graves. The graves that are just marked by stones. In most cemeteries, a landscaper came through and thought he was doing a great job by picking up those stones and piling them on the side. But the unmarked graves are still here in this cemetery because of the care that you have given. I think it is remarkable that we've gotten to this point, that you've gotten to this point, and the historical marker that will make sure that the story of this family and this cemetery goes on forever. Congratulations on that official designation. I am so glad to welcome you back today, and I do invite you to come over to the History Center after the ceremony is over. I've got some handouts that I'll pass around that give directions and parking and that sort of thing, but also give you some other ideas of how you can stay connected to the history of this area. We actually have a group that meets every month and learns something new about the history of this area that we all share together. So I invite you to learn more, to learn with us, and to stay connected. Welcome home. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm not sure that I could have told any of that any better than Ken or Ellen themselves. And I appreciate both of you so much for coming out today and talking with everybody and sharing that information with us. This project's been bigger than me, and it's taken many family members and volunteers and countless hours of hard work and love to bring this place together so that we can gather here today to celebrate this history. One of those organizations that helped us out was Save Austin Cemeteries. Save Austin Cemeteries gave a matching grant in 2022 for this project. Tarleton Young Cemetery was the first grant given by Save Austin Cemeteries. Those grants are for cemetery preservations within Travis County, and today we have Dale Flatt here to tell us a little bit more about his mission and the things that he does for the Travis County cemeteries. Dale?
I'd like to introduce Aro here, who is currently on the board of directors for Save Austin Cemeteries, and he was one of the decision makers that afforded these folks the grant. I'd like to also notice Bob Ward, who's in the back there with the white shirt, Travis County Historical Commission. I'm an Austin firefighter, retired now 8 years, and in my days off, I've always loved the old cemetery. So in 2000, I started going to the Austin History Center, going to the county deed records to try to find all of the cemeteries inside of Travis County. You might be surprised that there are over 220 cemeteries just like this one in Travis County. They talked about the Patterson Cemetery, the Eanes Cemetery. And so over the years, I started walking around, finding these things, and realized that there's a lot of lists of who's buried in the cemetery, but very few maps of a cemetery. And so in 2004, I created a nonprofit called Save Austin Cemeteries. It took a long time to come up with the name, but we just concentrate on Travis County. The main focus was to help the city with their 5 historic city cemeteries get a master plan. But we've always worked with folks like Bob Ward, folks like the Austin Genealogical Society, Kay Boyd especially, and the Texas Historical Commission. So over these many years, I've learned all the different nuances about this. I've created a database of all of the cemeteries in Travis County. I visit them all. I grabbed little bits of information, deeds and stories, things like that, and put them into a database. So when somebody like this comes along and wants to learn more about the site, I explain that these cemeteries are like a jigsaw puzzle without the benefit of the picture of the box. I don't know what it used to look like. All I can do is just set up the table and add the pieces where I can, and then walk away and somebody else will add more pieces, somebody else will add some other pieces, and now it's up to you to continue to add pieces. One of the things I've realized over the years is that we've got an older generation who may have photos and stories and documents that when they pass along, the kids clean out their house and they go, I don't know who these people are, and they throw things away. I encourage you to go to resources like the Eanes Library or the Austin History Center, scan your photos, make copies of them, and deposit them at as many locations as possible so the story will live on beyond you. One of the things I've learned that you do a lot of stuff on the internet or you save things on computer files, and then Microsoft will change to the next new version, and you're going to open up your version from 10 years ago, and it's gone. So I'd encourage you to write these things down, save them in a book, teach the younger generation about them, and pass those things along as best you can. Sometimes you can't. I applaud the work that's been done here. I drive past this all the time, and I was so glad to see the gates come in and this happen. The historical designation is a great step. One of the next steps we'll do is we'll come in and use the plat, and we'll start mapping in all of the gravestones. So in the event that somebody in the future does exactly what happens, remove all those rocks that were in the way, we'll have a map of where everything was. So there's a lot of folks in the county. If you have a resource, you want to learn about an old cemetery, reach out to Save Austin Cemeteries. Reach out to the Texas Historical Commission, the Travis County Historical Commission. There's a lot of tools for you to record your history and make things better. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Save Austin Cemeteries. You can find them on the website, and they'll send me the information, and we'll answer your questions as best we can. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Joe. As I mentioned, this project was way bigger than me. It took a lot of volunteers and family members to come out here. We've been working pretty hard for, I know, probably 3 or 4 years. In 2021 is kind of when I started really getting interested in everything, and I didn't know where I was going with the project or even where I should start. So I reached out to countless organizations in this area, and one lady contacted me back, and I've been so grateful for everything that she's helped me with, and with Daughters of American Revolution. And where's Ann? Ann's back here in the beautiful red hat. Ann has stuck with me since I've started this project. She's helped me out all the way through today. She's helped me with everything. She's organized video conferences for us to connect together and make all this happen. She's brought out volunteers for a couple of years now. Her and her organization have been out here, and I just really want to let them know how much I appreciate them and how much they mean to me and how they give me the courage to make it all come together and make it happen. So, Ann, I want to give you this little token of my appreciation, if I can get it open. It's just a small keychain It reads, may you be proud of the work that you do, the person that you are, and the difference that you make.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
this has been my privilege. It's exciting to watch how this has grown and evidenced by all of you here today. It's just been a wonderful project to be part of. So thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Ann. Thank you for all your hard work. I appreciate it. And one more thing before you leave. I want to thank the entire DAR group that's come out here. Cheryl has helped me so much. Cheryl, thank you so much. A thank you award about So it says, in recognition of your hard work and outstanding dedication to the Tarleton Young Cemetery, thank you so much for your time and efforts. Thank you, ladies. Y'all really, really make this possible today. Thank you.
Our privilege.
Thank
It really
you.
has
Thank
been.
you,
We're
ma'am.
so proud
And I
of
hope-
everything that you have done, because those of us that have family cemeteries, what you stand as a prime and wonderful example for us all to follow. So thank you for that and for the opportunity to be involved.
Thank you,
Appreciate
ladies.
it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, I just want to thank all the family members, my sister Josie for coming out with me and mowing it. Even before I started this, she would come out here and mow and do everything that she could to try to keep the grass below the fence line. Every May, we have a cleanup. And every May, Memorial Day weekend, the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, everyone's welcome to come out. Bring your lawnmowers, bring your weed eaters, clippers. Come on out. I plan every year from now on to make sure we at least make it to where when we come out here to visit, we can get through the gate. That's my goal. It's gone good, and I appreciate every one of you here today that celebrate this with me. And I think I'm going to turn it back over to these great ladies.
Well, I think that it is time that we've all been waiting for is the actual dedication of the marker. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to head down the hill just a bit.
That would
Oh,
read
the
this.
proclamation.
First, Josie.
Oh, Josie, yes, please come read this. Sorry, Josie, you took the
They skipped me. Okay, so this is the proclamation. If y'all want to see it, it's actually signed up here by the mayor. But it reads, be it known that whereas the Tarleton Young Cemetery has been dedicated as a historical cemetery by the Texas Historical Commissions, whereas the Tarleton Young Cemetery is the final resting place of individuals who were part of the backbone of the citizens of the current city of Austin. Whereas it is important to recognize and preserve that historical cemeteries represented by the Tarleton Young Cemetery, now, therefore, signed by Kirk Watson, the mayor of the city of Austin, Texas, do hereby proclaim that today, January the 14th, 2023, as a Tarleton Young Cemetery Day in Austin, Texas. And it was witnessed by the mayor in the city of Austin on the 10th day of January in 2023. So he signed this 4 days ago.
Thank you.
Yes,
All
let's
right,
head
let's
down the
say-
hill for our wonderful
Go down the hill.
unveiling. She's excited. She's ready to go. Up there in the shirt, right? Amanda. Yeah.
Thank you.
Before I do the actual formal dedication. This is Bob Ward, who's with the Texas Historical Commission. Travis County Historical Commission. My apologies. Would you like to see? Well, we great appreciate the Historical Commission is done to make this happen today. This is a formal ceremony to mark this dedication with these words. To all who visit this place, may the Tarleton Young Cemetery and its markers and monuments make effective the voice of this dedication. May it remind us of those whose service to country and heroic sacrifices aided and advanced the cause of independence and the continuing price of freedom. May it remind us of those ancestors who helped to shape our country and forge a future for their descendants. Nothing really ends until it is forgotten. Whatever is kept in memory still endures. Therefore, we, the Balcones chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, are proud to help dedicate this Texas historical marker in grateful recognition of the significance of this site. May it help to keep alive an appreciation for all who have gone before us.
I guess I would like to say thank you to all the volunteers, Ellen, all the people that put the effort in there. But this is another example of a lot of the hidden history of Travis County that is getting more and more recognized, but it's been hidden for a long time. So this is really a special time.
All right, Christy,
Y'all ready?
Yep. Yay. Job well done. Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. And don't forget, the museum's going to be open. If y'all want to go check out the Eames Museum, and bet a lot of neat things are in there. done, and I want to thank you with this little thank you piece.
Thank you very much. It's been my privilege.
Thank you, Anne.